Good afternoon. My name is Matt Hill. I am the Research and Planning Director at Thinkbox, and I'm going to be continuing the conversation around e-commerce by delving into one of the false assumptions that's often made about this sector. Because our marketing objective is to drive traffic to our online sites, services, we often make the assumption that therefore the best media route to do this is through online advertising. And now that's a really logical assumption to make. But the reality is that if you do this, you're going to limit your potential for growth. Let's start by just having a look back at just how significant this shift in behavior has been. So we've got the likes of City AM talking about how online retail has seen 5 years of growth in just 12 months as a result of the pandemic. We can see the Financial Times believe that this is a permanent shift of behavior, that people have got a taste of the convenience that online shopping brings, and they're going to continue this as we move outside of out of the pandemic itself. And then also we've got The Guardian reporting that the existing bricks and mortar retailers have actually really upped their game in this area, and it's eased the pressure on the high street. And so they're now in a much better position than before to take advantage of this shift in behavior. So what does this mean though in terms of our media behavior? So I think there's no doubt that there is this close relationship between online advertising and e-commerce, and you can see that in this chart here that shows how as the online share of retail sales grows, so is that of the digital share of media. Much of this is going to be search advertising, and I don't think we should underestimate the role for this type of media on our plan. And the appeal that it has, especially within the financial teams. It allows us to tightly control our spend. We can have an idea of what our optimal or our ideal cost per acquisition is, and we can stick to that and we can control that. It has very minimal upfront creative costs, so there's no big leap of faith that we need to make. And it also gives us a great deal of agility. We can test and learn as we can go. We can determine what works on the fly and adapt on the move. It's also incredibly easy for us to access. We don't need to employ teams of experts. Individual companies can access this through the plug and play platforms and get off the ground themselves. So it's an incredibly powerful starting point and a really important part of the overall marketing mix. But one of the challenges here is that there is an enemy lurking around the corner, and this is diminishing returns. So what we tend to see is that the initial investments are going to be reaping quite healthy returns. As we're speaking to those that are currently in market, the ones that are most likely to buy, and this allows us to hit these ideal cost per acquisitions that we've got in our mind. But as soon as we start to move beyond the group of the people who are most likely to be buying our products or using our services, then we find it harder and harder to achieve these goals that we've set. And we find that the return that we're generating starts getting lower and lower as we increase our spend. So we start to find ourselves hitting a ceiling. There's also another side effect to this, in that a lot of this advertising is very rational in its nature. It's not very emotive. And because of this, it doesn't really have any lasting effect. It doesn't impact on people who haven't acted on it immediately. And so as soon as we stop spending, we find ourselves back at square one. And the final problem with this type of advertising activity is that budget and bidding price are really the only cards that we've got in our hand. They're only cards for us to play. And if we're competing against people and businesses with bigger budgets than us, it's a very hard game to win at. And I think Rory Sutherland sums this up really well, as ever, with this quote: "Efficient marketing captures customers, effective marketing creates them." And what he's saying here is that if we want to break through this ceiling, we need to move away from this efficiency mindset. We need to change the nature of how we're approaching this. So we need to add some new cards into our hand. We need to be able to play on our actual product or our service itself. We need to take advantage of the uniqueness of our offering and find a way of communicating this to a broader group of potential buyers. We need to start using creativity, which can be a massive multiplier. And this is something that can really give us a huge competitive advantage. So now we can move into a space where we are using emotive brand-led advertising to generate interest, to generate salience around our product. And we can shift the nature of how we are generating business. We are drawing people in. We become less reliant on the likes of generic search and more reliant on brand search, with people typing our name directly into the search engine itself. We start to create this lasting priming effect as our communication is more emotive in its nature. And it will impact on people who aren't necessarily in market right now, but might be down the road. And we become much more scalable in the potential in terms of the number of customers that we can generate. So I think what we're seeing is that with all types of marketing activity, this is a crucial step forward for any business. But in the online world, it's even more important because we don't have physical availability, because we don't have this potential for serendipity for people to be walking past our store and just popping in the online world, then mental availability becomes absolutely paramount. If we can make it so that when people are in market, that our brand is the first one that comes to mind, then we know that we're going to be winning. And this is why we're seeing that that share of brand search is becoming a rapidly one of the most interesting low-cost brand metrics that we can use, because we can assess our ability and the nature of our marketing in terms of how it's driving direct traffic to us. There's a lovely example that was in Marketing Week on how Bloom and Wild have been using TV to drive this kind of fame, to increase awareness and consideration for their brand, and to actually impact on this all-important share of search. In fact, last year we saw a flood of new to TV e-commerce advertisers come on, taking advantage of this rise in e-commerce and the role that TV can play in driving awareness for their brands and driving traffic directly to their sites. You've got the likes of Depop, which is a fashion buying and selling platform, Button Up Box, which is dog food delivery, Fit, which is online gym fitness app. We've got Find My Past, which is a genealogy service. So all different shapes and sizes of business who are coming on and taking advantage of the power of TV. I think one of the most interesting studies here that we can look into is Kazoo, which is an online used car retailer. And if you look at their spend on TV and you map that against the increase in search volume you saw, you can see the instantaneous impact that it had on their business. You can see where it peaks, where TV advertising comes on air. You can see the relationship as you move along. And I think this is one of the massive advantage that e-commerce advertisers have in this space, is that they are better than other types of advertiser. They're easily able to see the impact that offline channels have on their traffic. And they can then start to use a more performance-led approach to optimize the impact that these channels are having. We saw earlier an article reporting that Kazoo are eyeing a blockbuster offering, 6 billion public offering, which isn't too bad, is it? So once this happens, there's quite an interesting effect. Once you start to generate traffic and interest, people searching for you directly, then there's the consequence of this is that you need to come back and look at your performance marketing. So we've seen some really interesting articles in this space. So we've got The Correspondent, which reported on eBay, who thought they were generating incredible return through their brand-led search advertising until they turned it off and realized that they were just generating that traffic anyway, and they were actually spending a load of money when they didn't need to. Adidas is a similar case study. This time here, they actually had a technical problem with their Adidas keywords in South America, where it went down for a week. But then when they went back and looked at the data, they realized that they still had the same volume of traffic they had previously. And Airbnb, I'm sure you would have seen widely reported, they turned off their performance marketing during the pandemic. But then when they looked at the numbers, they still saw they were generating 95% of the traffic that they were previously. So it's really important that you don't waste your budget on the goal-hanging media, that you have a look at the actual incrementality of your performance marketing and check that it's actually driving, because you've started to create a gravity for your brand. People will be coming to you anyway. Don't pay for customers that are already heading through the door. So in summary, the first thing is e-commerce doesn't mean that you default to e-marketing, that you're going to limit your growth this way. You absolutely start with performance, use it, but beware the ceiling. Once you reach this, you're going to have to change your approach. For the online world, without any physical availability, mental availability is absolutely everything. You need to be the brand that people think of when they're in market for your product. TV can be a fantastic shop window for an e-commerce business. And if you build it, if you build your brand, then people will come, and you need to check the incrementality of your other marketing. That's it from me. Thank you.